Hello, this is Dr. Z, and this video is going to be about iterating with the while loop. So, iterative control with the while loops. A while loop allows you to repeat a block of code as long as a certain condition is being met. Once the condition is no longer being met, the program will stop repeating the loop. While loops only check that condition at the start of each loop, so the loop does not end immediately when the condition changes. While loops must be initialized so the condition is true before the loop checks for the first time. There must be an opportunity for the condition to change within the loop, otherwise you might be stuck in an infinite loop that has no way of ending. So I'm going to start with a pretty simple example, counting and printing numbers until you reach 10. Example while loop. Counting and printing numbers until reaching 10. Okay, hopefully this looks okay. I'm resizing my window a bit so I can adjust something. Should hopefully still look fine. So first we need to initialize both the count and the loop. Initializes the loop condition and the count. So my while is going to be while num less than or equal to 10, colon. That is my format. The word while, you'll notice, is a different color. Condition, and then colon. If the condition is true, it does what's inside the loop. So first thing I'm going to do, print num, and then num equals num plus 1. That is my condition changing within the loop. I'm going to add 1 to each time through the loop. Add 1 each time through the loop. In this case, that opportunity for the condition to change is adding 1 each time. In this case, the opportunity for the condition, conditional being num less than or equal to 10, to change is adding 1 each time. When you want to end the loop, get rid of the tab. Like I said before in class, Python uses white space for things like this. So this tab, this is in the loop, this is in the loop. We're now no longer in the loop. And then I'll print all done. Now let me go ahead and run this. First time, of course. Should print the numbers from 0 to 10. 0 to 10, and then it says all done. The first time through the loop, num is 0, so it prints 0, then add 1 to it. Now num is 1, it's still less than 10. Add 1 to it, now it's 2, and so on. When I print 9, add 1 to it, it is 10. 10 is less than or equal to 10. If you didn't want it to include 10, you just do less than and not less than or equal to. Now, num equals num plus 1, now it's 11. 11 is not less than or equal to 10, so instead of doing what's inside, it ends the loop. You'll also notice as I move my cursor, after I run it, when I float my cursor over that, it tells me the value of what is currently in there, which can be useful sometimes. So there is my basic while loop. I'm going to go ahead and do another example. Because you can also use an input to control when the condition changes. You can also use an input, a user input, to control when the condition changes. So let's write a program. I'm going to ask the user for numbers until they enter a negative number and count how many numbers were entered. Adjust my window a little bit. Let's ask the user for numbers until they enter a negative number, while keeping count of how many numbers were entered. And remember, as I said before, the first thing you have to do with a while loop is make sure to initialize the while loop. So num equals 0. This value will never be used, but it is an initial condition to ensure we enter the loop in the first place. Count equals 0. This is a counter to keep track of how many iterations we have made. We'll start with 0 and add 1 each loop. Okay. Count, not counter. You can call it whatever. Again, counters don't have to be named count. I like to use the word count for counters because I can look at it and know that is a counter. Okay, while num greater than or equal to 0. You'll also notice when I do the colon and hit enter, it does automatically tab it for me, which is nice. The loop should keep repeating until the user enters a negative number. So, like I said, I'm not using that num at all because I'm immediately replacing it. Enter a number, negative to end. And this is a message for the user, so they know what to do. Count equals count plus 1. Because we're counting how many times we've done this. Notice we don't do anything with the value of number. Except using it as an indicator to end the loop. Okay. Done with the loop. By the time we exit the loop, count should hold how many times we have iterated. Keep in mind that we still add 1 to count in the final iteration. So if you want to know not just how many numbers they entered, but how many non-negative numbers they entered, you'd have to do something else to it. We won't worry about that for now. If you don't want to count the last one, you would have to do a little more to subtract 1 from the value. Whether it's just subtracting 1 at the very end, or starting it at -1, or there's a few other methods, but we're just going to leave it as is because this is a simple program. So there are multiple ways to do this, but for now we won't worry about it. Okay, print. You entered a total of count numbers, period. Okay, so we're going to start. This num equals 0 means nothing. It's just so you can get into the loop in the first place. We call that making sure that the condition is initialized. And every time a number is entered, add 1 to the value of count. As soon as a number is entered that's negative, that's our last time to the loop, and we end. Doesn't matter when I enter, 45, 78, 52, 4, 173, -60. You entered a total of 6 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it kept count of that. You can do it again as many times as you want to just keep track of how many times you'll do it. Okay. See my notes over here. Okay, one more example. You can also use compound Boolean expressions to help with loop control. Remember that uppercase and lowercase of the same letter are different characters because I'll be using letters for this. Let's ask the user for two numbers, add them together, and show the result. Then repeat until they say no. Okay. Very often when there's a yes or no answer, this is very personal preference. I like to use that variable name. It's a thing that can be either yes or no. You can use whatever you want. You can use response, but I like to use that because I look at that variable name and I say, oh, it should be yes or no. So initialize the condition while yes, no is equal to capital Y, or that's the pipe, which is shift and then backslash, the button between enter and backspace. That's or yes, no is equal to lowercase y. Because as I said above, upper and lowercase letters count differently. Okay, enter two numbers and add them together. We've done this before. num1 equals int input, enter number, num2, enter second number. And then we're going to add them together. We're not saving it, we're just showing it. Print the sum is num1 plus num2. Okay, now input, add numbers again. Yes, no. And that's the end of the loop. So we're going to go into the loop, enter two numbers, add them together, ask the user if they want to go again. As long as they put in either capital Y or lowercase y, it will continue. Now, one thing to note, this loop does not actually check for y or n, it checks for y and not y. The above loop does not actually check for y or n. It checks for y or lowercase y or not y. It will keep going as long as y or y is entered, but end on any other response, not just on n. Print goodbye, just so we can see visually that we're done. Run this, enter number 5, or second number 8, 13. Add again, yes. Enter number 56, second number negative 82. I did lowercase y before uppercase y, yes. Scroll this down so I can see it better. Enter number 17, a second number 26. Add again, no. And we're done. I'm going to run it once more and don't have to put an N. Number 5, 6, yes. 6, 17, Q. And it's done there also. Anything that's not a Y, lowercase or uppercase, ends the loop. So that has been the end of a brief introduction to iterative control with while loops. We will be using while loops quite a lot throughout the entire semester. This is just the basics of it for an introduction. But we're going to go ahead and end the video here, and I will see you in class soon.